Hello, and Tanashi. My name is Lane Grace, Lane Grace Dashini Kashun, and I am the Indigenous Health Research Facilitator for the Interior Region with the British Columbia Network Environment for Indigenous Health Research, or the BC NEAR. And I'm also a proud member of the Métis Nation of British Columbia. And currently today I'm coming to you from Vernon, BC, on the traditional and unceded territory of the Syilx Okanagan people. And today I'm going to be going over grant proposal writing and the components to include in your grant proposal. Proposal writing can seem like an extremely colonial and structured thing with lots of questions and strict deadlines and word counts, but at the BC NEAR we aim to erase as many of these barriers as we can by ensuring we're there with you every step of the way throughout your grant application. We offer our own internal grants and funding calls annually, and these accommodate all ways of knowing and knowledge transferring. But that being said, all grants are going to have slightly different structures, and they often ask for slightly different things. So today I'm going to be going over components to include in the proposal portion that is very common on multiple grant processes. So the proposal portion of a grant application is where you explain what your project is, and you convince organizations offering grants that your project deserves to be funded. And there's lots of grants and funding out there for health-related projects done by Indigenous communities, collectives, and organizations. And at the BC NEAR, we can help you find this funding. We can also help you complete the application and the grant proposal, and we can support you wherever else you need. So a really good place to start is by reviewing the funding requirements in depth. See if you and your project are eligible to apply. Determine the types of projects that the grant is looking to fund and begin thinking of how your project matches this description. It's also important to take note of the deadline to apply for the grant and also determine how you are going to submit your application once you're finished. So I really recommend starting a to-do list here as you read through these requirements because this is going to help you stay organized throughout the entire process. So your to-do list could look something like this, where you list the eligibility requirements and the deadlines for the grant application, and also the different components that are required for the application. If there's any supporting documents like a resume or letters of support, include those in your checklist. And I also think it's really helpful to create a work plan or an outline of your project and the different steps and activities that you'll be completing during your project, because this is going to organize you for when you actually are writing the proposal. It's great to have that idea in mind of what your project will look like. So once you have your project idea and you have found a grant that you're eligible for and you'd like to apply to, it's time to finally start crafting your proposal. And there's a lot of components to a proposal, and I'm going to break these down quickly and then I'm going to go over each of them in a bit more depth. So quickly, a proposal usually includes a project summary. It also includes an introduction of you and your research team, and then a description of any partnerships that you might have or any future plans to collaborate. A proposal usually talks about some gap in knowledge or programs, and then it talks about how your project is going to fill that gap. A proposal lists the key activities or the methods that the project's going to utilize, as well as any future research or activities that your project will lead to. Most grant applications also ask for a formal work plan or a timeline for your project, as well as a budget for your project. And then the last step in this grant application is to review what you have and make sure it's all there, and even get some outside eyes on your grant application to review it one last time. So like I mentioned, it's good to start with a summary of your project. And here you can briefly explain your project and its objectives, and keep this concise because later you're going to go into the outcomes and aims of your project a little bit more in depth. And as you write your proposal, keep in mind the funding requirements and keep in mind what this grant organization is looking to fund, and use this to kind of shape your proposal as you move forward. So after your summary, it's important to introduce yourself and your research team, and mention what everybody's experience and knowledge brings to this project. Also mention the community that you come from and the community that's going to benefit from your project. After this, you can explain any partnerships or plans to collaborate with other organizations and talk about how your project's going to benefit from these partnerships and collaborations. Because showing a strong network of partners and collaborators to carry out this project is going to strengthen your proposal. And any project should aim to fill some sort of gap or need within the community. And so here you're going to identify that gap. And this could be a gap in the quality of programs and services, or a gap of information, or any other community need that you can identify. And if you can, relate this to the funding requirements. And also, if you have evidence to support the impacts of this gap, whether this evidence comes from data or previous research or a community member's experience, use that evidence to support the need for your project. And once you've identified that gap or that need, explain how your project is going to fill that gap. And so this is where you discuss the outcomes or the aims of your project. And an outcome or an aim means the end result of your project and its benefits. So, for example, my project will result in a benefit to the overall health and wellness of the community by strengthening the connection to our culture and our traditional teachings. And again, if you can, incorporate evidence here. If a similar project has shown a great community benefit, use that example to support the need for the project in your own community. After you've identified the need for your project and the benefit that it's going to have, talk about the details of how you're going to actually complete your project. So you're going to discuss here the methods or the key activities that your project will entail. For example, we'll hire a research development assistant to help assist with project organization. Or to get community input, we will hold a community sharing circle. So those are all examples of key activities or methods that you're going to do, and that those are going to lead to the completion of your project. And if applicable, you can discuss where this project will lead. For example, if your project was focused on research development, you can discuss any future research it will lead to. So, does this project lead to any further activities or partnerships? And here you can also explain maybe a longer term impact of your project. So before beginning the written proposal, if you remember, we made a rough outline and work plan for your project, and that was a really useful step because it guides your proposal writing, and because most grant applications will also ask you to complete a work plan. So in this step, you can use your rough work plan and you can create a more formal work plan. So every application might require something slightly different for this step of your proposal. So it's important to read the requirements and the application form. But generally, a work plan includes creating a timeline for when you will complete the different parts of your project. And different grants may require your project to be completed in a certain period of time or a term. So outline your project with feasible steps to be completed in that funding term. So just for an example, the BC NEAR funding term is 12 months. So you have 12 months where you're funded to complete your project. Grant proposals also include a budget section, and this is so you can demonstrate why you need the funding, and you can allocate the funding to your project accordingly. Your budget can include costs like transportation, so mileage and gas. It can include food costs at meetings and honoraria for elders and knowledge keepers and any other contributors. And it can include hiring external professionals such as research development assistants or a film and video editing expert, and other materials your project may require, such as printing. And keep in mind that lots of the time, costs we don't think of crop up on us. So when you create this budget, it can help to make your estimates generously to account for that. And also keep in mind that most grants have eligible and ineligible expenses. So be sure to check out what you can and cannot spend the funds on when you're creating this budget. Okay, so those are the general components of a grant proposal, although some grants may require additional or fewer steps. So before you submit your application, review your proposal. And it's also great if you can get some outside eyes to review your proposal and give you some feedback. And the Indigenous Health Research Facilitators at the BC NEAR are happy to help with this and support you in any way when you're developing your proposal, including this review step and offering detailed feedback on your completed application. So finally, just some general tips and tricks. When writing your grant, try and use clear and concise words, and try to make that proposal easy for anyone from any background to read and understand. And whenever you can, incorporate evidence from previous research or previous projects to demonstrate that need for your project. And lastly, just make sure to always review your proposal before submitting. All right, so that is it for the proposal writing webinar. And please feel free to contact the BC NEAR to get connected with Indigenous health research facilitators in your region if you have any further questions. Because we can help you find funding for your project, and we can help you with this grant proposal, and we can help review your grant proposal, and just answer any other questions you might have along the way. So overall, we're just here to help you every step of the way with your health research. And we also have lots of other grant writing resources available on our website, so please check those out. And thank you so much for watching. Marcy.